Hi, welcome back to our lecture. I want to spend a little bit of time working with CloudFormation hands-on. And in order to do that, I'm going to create a CloudFormation stack using a very simple template, which will create a single S3 bucket. So the first thing I'm going to do is I will log into AWS and I will go to the CloudFormation web console. And so I type in CloudFormation and click on the service, and that will take me to the web console. And once I'm in the web console, I can go ahead and begin to create a new stack. Now, before I do that, I want to take a quick look at the CloudFormation template code. So I'll go over to a code editor. In this case, I'm using the Microsoft Visual Code Editor, which is a free editor that you can run on Windows or Mac systems, and it's actually my preferred editor of choice at the moment. So I've opened up the CloudFormation template that we're going to use to create a stack. It's a very small text file containing the JSON code, which is used to define our stack. And you'll notice, of course, that the CloudFormation template, all of the code in the template is encapsulated by these curly brackets. It's essentially one big JSON object. And the first key that you'll find in the template is this AWS template format version, and you'll always find this at the very top of every template that you launch. And then we have one template section that's defined, which is the resources section. And every CloudFormation template, if you recall, has to have a resources section. And in the resources section, we have basically one resource which is being defined. The logical name of that resource is SCIS 665. And you'll see that this resource has a type, and the type of the resource is the AWS S3 bucket type. And there are literally dozens and dozens of different types of resources that are available. And you can find all of these resources documented online. The AWS maintains very good documentation for these different resources. My S3 bucket resource has a property, and that is a tag. So we have a metadata tag where we're tagging this with a key called environment, and this key could be anything you want it to be. Again, it's a metadata tag. This is something that we might be using to sort of track the resources that we're creating. The value of this tag is just simply test. And then I also have some metadata information, and this is really information. This is like a comment line. If you writing an application in something like Java or Python, you want to comment your code, and this is a way that we can sort of comment our code in the CloudFormation template. So very simple. Very simple stack that we're going to launch here. I'm going to go back to the CloudFormation web console, and I will click on the Create Stack button. And it's going to ask me some information. Do I want to use an existing template? Do I want to use a sample template? In this case, I have an existing template I want to launch. I need to specify the template. It's asking me for the source. I can specify an Amazon S3 URL as the source, which is what I will do for this hands-on segment. I could also create a template on my local workstation using a code editor, and then I could upload that template file. And S3 and CloudFormation then will store that template file in an S3 bucket and then launch the stack. In this case, I'm going to use the S3 URL, which is described in the template or in the PowerPoint presentation. And so you can see I'm providing an S3 web URL, and I will click Next. And then I need to give the stack a name, and every stack has to have a unique name in each region. And I will just call this, I'll just call it My Bucket. The My Bucket stack is very simple. There are no parameters for this particular stack, and so I will click Next. And when I do that, I can specify a tag for my stack if I want to. I could say Project Fido. I could modify some permissions. We're not gonna worry about some of these advanced options like stack policy and so on. We'll just click Next. And then we can sort of review what's going to happen. It's going to launch a new stack using this template, which I have specified, no parameters, no stack options, or anything else that's set. And I can now create the stack by clicking on the Create Stack button. When I do that, what you will see is in this Events tab is a series of events that are taking place. CloudFormation is basically interpreting the code in my stack template, and it's coming up with a plan to create all of the different resources that I have defined. In this case, it's pretty simple. It's really just creating a single resource, an S3 bucket for me. And so, and this is something that will, will happen pretty quickly. You can see that it shows that the My Bucket stack, the creation is in progress. It shows the steps that it's doing. If I hit the refresh under events, you'll see that there were a series of things that happened. It says resource creation initiated, and it created the bucket, so that is complete, and that was the only resource that was being created in the stack. And so the My Bucket stack itself is now complete as well. If I click on stack info, then you'll see that there's a stack ID, an identifier, and it tells me when it was created, gives me the tags that are associated with the stack, and so on. If I click on resources, then it will show me all of the different resources which have been created as part of this stack as well. And there's only one resource you can see here is the S3 bucket. And there's sort of a line break here just simply because I have expanded, I've zoomed in on this web page just to make it a little bit easier for you to see what is going on. If I click on the template tab here, you can actually see all of the raw template code which was used to create this particular stack. So it created an S3 bucket. Let's go in, and I'm going to open up a new tab. Let's go and take a look at the S3 service, and we should be able to see a new bucket that was created by the stack. I'm going to click on the S3 web console, and when I do that, I will find a new stack that has been created called My Bucket, SCIS 665. I'll click on that, and one of the things that you might think is a little bit unusual is if you look at this bucket name, and I'll try to zoom in here a little bit. Look at the bucket name. So CloudFormation created a bucket for me. It's my bucket SCIS 665 and then a whole string of random alphanumeric characters. And you might be wondering, well, where is this? Where are all these extra characters coming from? Well, when you define the resource that you want to create, this S3 bucket in the template, I'm giving it a name. The resource is called SCIS 665. The stack is called My Bucket. And so if you look at the actual bucket name, the real name of the bucket, the CloudFormation gave the bucket a name that starts with the actual stack name, My Bucket, dash the logical resource name, SCIS 665, and then a randomly generated set of characters. So why did it add all of these random characters to the bucket name? Well, it does that to ensure that the bucket name is unique. And it also allows me to launch multiple stacks in the same region using the exact same template. Every single time I launch a new stack using this particular template, it's going to generate a somewhat random name and a unique name. And that allows me to create multiple stacks in the same region using that same template. I could, create a CloudFormation template, and then I could share it with a team member, and that team member could spin up their own stack, and this random name ensures that the two stacks don't try to create resources with identical names. And of course, you know how important that is with S3 buckets, since S3 buckets must be globally unique. Okay, so we have our bucket that has been created. Let's go back to the CloudFormation stack. And what I want to do is I actually want to update this stack. I want to update the template. And one of the things I'd like it to do is I'd like it to output the name of the bucket. You see, I clicked on the Output tab, and there are no outputs for this stack. And you can use outputs to essentially output information about the resources created by the stack. In this case, I want the stack to output the actual real name of the S3 bucket that it created. And so I will do that by adding a little bit of code to the CloudFormation template. I'm going to copy it directly from the presentation, this little outputs section code. And I'll go to the template, and we're going to add it as another section to our template below the resources section. So I need to add this comma in here to delineate it as a separate section within this JSON object. And so what I will do then, so I've copied it in there. You see it's going to create an output. The output name is going to be bucket URL, and it's going to get an attribute from the SCIS 665 logical resource. And the attribute that I want it to output is the website URL for that particular bucket. And so I will save this to the file, and I'm going to go and I want to update this bucket. But I'm going to, instead of using the current template, I want to replace the template that was used to create the stack. And I'm going to upload that by picking a file that came from my code base. So I'm going to pick a file that, let's see, it is from my demo environment, so CloudFormation, and I'm going to use the S3 bucket JSON file, which I just had modified. I've selected the updated file, and I click Next, and it is, let's see, I'm going to replace the current template file. Oh, well, it gave me an error. So this is actually a good problem to have. So it's telling me that there's some sort of template format error. Output's name, bucket URL is non-alphanumeric. Well, let's look back at the template. So what it did was it did a quick validation on the template. And it's telling me that, you know, there's something not quite right with your template code. And I actually know what it is in this case. And this is actually kind of a tricky problem to troubleshoot. I copied that code from the PowerPoint presentation, but the actual quote character in the PowerPoint presentation isn't a standard double quotation character. So I'm going to backspace and I'll paste in or type in a double quote character from my keyboard. You notice now that it actually fixed the code. So my code editor was telling me that there was something not quite right with this code. And that can be a problem that you have when you try to copy code from a PowerPoint presentation or Word file or even maybe from some internet site. The character encoding might not be identical to what your system expects. Okay, so I've corrected this mistake, and I'm going to go back in, and I want to replace the file, upload template file. I'm going to choose that S3 bucket file. Again, click on Next. There are no parameters for this particular template, so I will click on Next. And it gives me the option to change some of the stack settings. I don't want to change any of those settings, so I click on Next. And now it lets me review the stack. And one of the most important things that it will do is it will create a change set preview. And it will list any changes that are going to occur in the stack. Now, technically, I'm not changing any resources in the stack, so there are really no changes that are going to take place to the actual resources. I'm just adding an output to the stack. But if I were going to change any resources in the stack, they would be listed here in this section. And that's something that I always pay very close attention to. Anytime I'm updating a CloudFormation stack, I want to see exactly what resources the CloudFormation service is going to change, because I want to make sure it's changing the resources that I intend it to change. Okay, everything looks good, so I'm going to click on Update Stack. And when I do that, it tells me that now there is an update in progress. This will happen very quickly. If I click on the refresh, update is complete. And now if I click on the Outputs tab, you can see that there is now an output value here. You can, and I'll sort of zoom out a little bit so that it looks a little bit more normal. So you can see the key is my bucket URL, and now there's a value, which is the web URL for the S3 bucket that was created by the stack. And the templates that I create pretty much always have one or more output values. And these can be really useful because I can programmatically access these values and use them in all sorts of useful ways. The last thing I will show you here when I go back and look at my stacks is how to delete the stack. I will do that by selecting the stack and then clicking on the delete button. And what will happen is you'll see there's a status message saying that a delete is in progress, and CloudFormation will automatically delete the resources in the template for me. Now, there are certain resources like S3 buckets that CloudFormation won't delete an S3 bucket if there are objects in the bucket. So you'd have to actually delete all of the objects in the bucket first, and then CloudFormation is able to actually delete the resource. But this is one of the areas where CloudFormation is so handy and so useful. If you have a template where you are creating dozens and dozens of different resources, and you want to be able to clean everything up very easily, all you have to do is just simply delete the stack, and CloudFormation will go through and delete all of the different resources in the stack automatically for you. Very, very handy and helpful.